In 1315, the House of Habsburg moved into the mountains with a powerful force covered in heavy armor. Knights on war horses, flying banners, and confidence. To them, this was a simple mission. No one could stop them. But high on the mountain slopes, hidden people watched. They wore no shiny helmets, had no titles, no fancy armor. They had deep knowledge of their land and determination that would not break. Then one moment came. A shout rang out. Rocks and dirt crashed down the mountain. Massive stones slammed into the squeezed line of soldiers. Heavy logs rolled down, destroying the formation. Horses panicked. The line fell apart in seconds. Knights in heavy armor were torn from horses and crashed to the ground, trapped by their own suits. Shouts were lost in metal hitting metal. What was meant to be a show of strength turned into chaos. Within hours, an army everyone believed was unbeatable lay scattered and broken. This was Morgarten. To understand Morgarten, you must first understand one question. Who thinks they own the land, and who refuses to accept that claim? This story takes place in what is now central Switzerland. In 1315, this was not a country but a rugged mountain area with narrow valleys, thick forests, and dangerous passes. 3 valleys mattered: Uri, Schweitz, and Unterwalden. These small communities looked poor at first. No big towns, no grand castles, no rich courts. But their location was valuable. They sat on the roads crossing the Alps. Anyone moving goods, armies, or money through the mountains had to pass through them. Control the roads and you control trade. For generations, Uri, Schweitz, and Unterwalden ruled themselves. They picked judges, managed roads, and answered directly to the Holy Roman Emperor, not local nobles. By law and old custom, they did not have to belong to any regional lord. But the nearby House of Habsburg did not accept this. The Habsburgs controlled big territories in what is now Austria. They were rich, well-connected, and respected for military power. To them, land near their borders should answer to them. Judges should be chosen by them. They believed these valleys were a mistake in the system. The valleys believed differently. They thought, we have lived free for many generations. No local lord has the right to rule us. At first, the Habsburgs did not attack but put pressure on the valleys. They sent officials and questioned local court decisions. Each step looked small and legal, but each took away independence. To the Habsburgs, it was business. To the valleys, it felt like invasion. Tension grew year by year until a fight broke out between Schweitz and the Abbey of Einsiedeln. This gave the Habsburgs their public excuse to act with force. Duke Leopold I of Austria was chosen to enforce Habsburg authority. Leopold did not plan to talk but to scare. He gathered an army meant to impress just by appearing. Armored knights, well-trained soldiers, flying banners, shining armor. Leopold's plan was simple: march through the mountain roads, enter the valleys, and break resistance before it formed. They knew they could not beat armored knights on open ground. They knew they could not match armor with armor. But they knew their mountains. They knew where the roads became narrow. They knew where horses lost their strength. They knew where a moving line of soldiers became weak and easy to attack. As Leopold's army got ready to move, the valleys got ready to choose where the battle would happen. They were not planning to win glory. They were planning to stay alive and keep their freedom. And that quiet choice made high in the mountains led directly to Morgarten. The campaign began with movement. At the first light of morning, the Habsburg army began to march. It was a large force for that time. Several thousand men, many of them armored knights, hundreds of horses, foot soldiers, helpers, and supply troops that stretched the line far down the road. At the front rode Duke Leopold I of Austria. From his place, the march looked impressive. Banners flew high, armor caught the morning sun. The sound of metal, horse hooves, and voices filled the valley. This was not an army hiding. This was an army meant to be seen and feared. Leopold's plan was clear: show strength, move fast, arrive as a force no one would dare to fight. The line moved in marching order, not ready for battle. Knights and men on horses led. Foot soldiers came next in long lines. Supply wagons and camp equipment came at the back. The formation was strong, but long and stretched out. Heavy, hard to turn once it was moving. And no one seemed worried. From Leopold's view, there was no enemy army to face. Just mountain communities that would give up once they saw this powerful force. As the Habsburg army went deeper into the highlands, another preparation was already happening. High above the roads where no one could see, the defenders were gathering. Men from Uri, Schweitz, and Unterwalden met together before the Habsburg line even reached them. They did not gather in one big group. They moved in small groups, quietly, using forest paths and slopes they had known since they were children. Local leaders chose them for their experience and knowledge, not for rank. These men understood one crucial truth. They could not beat this army by fighting it head-on. So their plan was built around one idea. Do not fight the army itself. Break the march. Days before the Habsburg army moved, local leaders studied the roads. They walked them many times. They watched how wagons moved. They saw where horses slowed down on uneven ground. They looked for one thing above all, a place where the army had to squeeze together in a narrow space. They found it on a narrow mountain road near Lake Ageri. Here the road was trapped between water and rising ground. Here a wide formation was impossible. Here a long line of soldiers could not turn or move quickly into battle order. Once this place was chosen, the planning became exact and detailed. The ambush force was divided into clear groups with specific jobs. At the highest points above the road, strong men prepared heavy objects. Large stones were loosened from their places. Logs were put in position so gravity would carry them downward. These men were told to wait, not to fight with weapons. Below them, closer to the road, fighters with long weapons took their places. Halberds, spears, and hooks. Their job was not to charge forward, but to pull riders off horses, to stop forward movement, and to keep fallen men from standing and fighting again. Further along the slope, backup groups waited. Their job was to block the passage once the attack started, to prevent escape, and to stop any regrouping of the Habsburg forces. The entire trap was set for one specific moment, when the full Habsburg army was squeezed into the narrow space with no way out. The Habsburg army moved forward without knowing any of this. They came on confidently, following the roads toward the valleys. The morning became afternoon. The march continued. Officers called orders calmly without any rush. There was no sign of an enemy anywhere. This was the final moment the defenders had been waiting for. From above the road, the ambush force watched in total silence. They saw the front of the line pass through the narrow area. They saw the middle move into position. They saw the back continuing to push men forward, making everything tighter. The whole Habsburg army was now locked in by the terrain. Only then did the attack begin. The first strike came from above. Several large rocks were released all at once. They fell, bounced, and broke apart as they hit the road below. These smashed into the front horses. Another rock crashed down into the foot soldiers just behind them. One horse fell sideways. Its body blocked the passage completely. Forward movement stopped at the front, but the men behind did not know this yet. They kept moving forward, following the rhythm of the march. Within seconds, the middle of the line pressed together violently. Shouts went up, not command shouts, but confused questioning. Before officers could understand what was happening, the second wave hit. 3 logs rolled down the slope, getting faster as they came down. They hit shields, knocked men off balance, and scared the horses into panic. Several horses stood up on their back legs and crashed into each other. One fell, then another. The road was now blocked completely. This is when the defenders moved in. They did not rush all at once. They came down in small, organized groups. Their targets were clear. They hit horses first. They pulled riders sideways using hooks and halberds. They attacked legs, not the armor. One knight was dragged from his horse and slammed onto the stone road. In heavy armor, he could not get back up. Another rider lost control when his horse was struck. The animal fell, crushing men beneath it. Each fallen body became an obstacle. Each obstacle made the trap tighter. Inside the line, panic spread fast. Men at the front could not move forward. Men at the back kept pushing. They did not know the road was blocked. Those in the middle were squeezed between them. Orders were shouted, but they broke apart in the noise. The sound of battle echoed violently between the water and stone. It was impossible to tell where danger was coming from. Knights tried to turn their horses. There was no room. Soldiers tried to pull back. They were shoved forward by pressure from behind. The army lost its shape. What was once an organized line became separate struggles. Some men tried to climb the slope, slipping on loose dirt and tree roots. Others were pushed sideways toward the lake. In heavy armor, balance was fragile. One wrong step was enough. Several soldiers fell into the water. The weight of their gear pulled them under almost instantly. The sight was terrifying. Now the panic became total. Men threw down their shields. Some cut their weapons loose. Anything that might slow them was left behind. The defenders did not chase wildly. They stayed close. They kept pressure on the trapped sections of road. Their goal was not to kill everyone. It was to make the whole formation collapse. Within minutes, the Habsburg army was no longer fighting as an army. It was thousands of individual people reacting to fear, noise, and pressure. By the time Leopold understood this was a planned ambush and not just a local fight, the damage was already done. The terrain had done its work. The march was destroyed. Morgarten had turned from a show of power into a fight just to survive. Once the formation was broken, there was no way to fix it. What remained of the Habsburg army was scattered along the road in separate groups. Some were still fighting. Most were no longer thinking about battle. They were thinking about escape. The narrow passage offered no clear way out. Forward was blocked. The slope was unstable. The lake was deadly. Men began to move without orders. Some tried to push uphill, scrambling through trees and loose ground. They slipped. They fell. Those in heavy armor could not climb fast enough. Others turned back along the road, forcing their way through wounded men and fallen horses. Shields were left behind. Weapons were dropped. Anything that slowed movement was abandoned. The retreat did not happen all at once. It spread unevenly, starting from the middle of the line and moving outward. Officers tried to take back control. They shouted orders. They tried to gather small groups. But the terrain defeated them. There was no space to regroup. No open ground to form ranks. No clear sight lines. Fear moved faster than authority. As the pressure eased in some areas, survivors began to escape from the trap. They did not stop to check who came with them. They did not wait for orders. They ran until the sound of fighting faded behind them. Near the front of the line, Duke Leopold I of Austria finally understood how bad the disaster was. This was not a small setback. This was not a temporary problem. The army could not continue. It could not fix the situation. Staying in the trap would only mean more losses. The choice to leave was made out of necessity, not strategy. Signals were sent where possible. Officers tried to spread the order, but the retreat was already happening. What came next was not an organized pullback. It was a slow, painful escape of what was left of the force. Only after the army cleared the narrow ground did it begin to come back together in pieces. Small groups gathered. Wounded men were carried or left behind. The size of the loss became visible. Armor lay abandoned on the road. Broken weapons scattered across the path. The lake surface was disturbed where men and horses had disappeared. By early afternoon, the fighting had stopped. The mountain was quiet again. The defenders did not chase the survivors. They stayed on the high ground, watching the survivors leave the valleys. They did not chase glory. They did not want more bloodshed. Their goal had already been reached. The Habsburg army had been forced out. Morgarten did not end with a final charge or a dramatic last stand. It ended with silence. A silence broken only by the realization that a powerful army had been defeated, not just by being stronger, but by preparation, terrain, and good timing. The battle at Morgarten was over within hours, but its impact lasted much longer. News spread quickly across the Holy Roman Empire. A powerful Habsburg force, led by armored knights, had been defeated by mountain communities. This shocked Europe. For hundreds of years, heavy cavalry had been seen as unstoppable. Knights meant power, order, and authority. At Morgarten, that belief collapsed. The defeat was not caused by poor fighting skills or bad luck. It was caused by terrain, preparation, and timing. Armor became a burden. Numbers became pressure that crushed. Movement became impossible. For the Habsburgs, the campaign was a failure. Their authority in the mountain regions was weakened. Their plans to expand had to be reconsidered. For Uri, Schweitz, and Unterwalden, the result was decisive. They had defended their independence, not through talking and deals, but through organized action and discipline. In the years after, these communities made their alliance stronger. They promised to defend each other. They protected the mountain roads together. What started as local resistance became the foundation of a confederation that grew into Switzerland. Morgarten is remembered not for its size or the number of people who died. It is remembered for what it proved: that power based only on threats and intimidation can fail. That careful planning can overcome prestige and fancy titles. That the landscape itself can decide history. The battlefield returned to silence. The road was used again. The lake became calm, but the lesson remained. Morgarten is not the story of heroic charges. It is the story of knowing where to stand, when to wait, and when to strike. And that is why it still matters today.